In a world where medicine often draws stark lines between the possible and the impossible, one family dared to compose a different melody. Emma and Olivia, sisters bound not just by blood but by flesh and bone, shared everything: their lives, their dreams, and even the profound, terrifying, exhilarating desire to become mothers. Their love for Jack created a unique triad, a bond that defied convention. But biology presented a seemingly insurmountable wall. Doctors declared pregnancy a death sentence, a catastrophic risk to their conjoined bodies and any potential child. To try was madness. To succeed, unthinkable. This is the story of how they turned that unthinkable into reality, not just surviving, but creating life in a way that left science speechless and the world in awe. Prepare for a journey where love truly rewrote the rules. Let us know where you are watching from and what time you found this video. It was not a whisper that the warnings were. Rather, they were a thunderclap. Anatomically impossible, a doctor concluded, pointing to the complex vascular network that connected Emma and Olivia's lower torsos. It's impossible. The shared circulatory system couldn't handle the strain of one pregnancy, let alone. The sentence lingered, heavy with the danger that was not disclosed. There is a high probability that the fetus may develop incompatibly, have bleeding, or suffer from catastrophic organ failure for each and every one of you. In the vicinity of theirs, Jack's knuckles became whiter, and the twins' hand that they were holding trembled between his. As a sensible and passionately protective person, Emma experienced the chilling fear. Despite the fact that Olivia's soul was burning brighter, she resisted. Olivia's voice was unusually firm as she added, "We are aware of the potential dangers. But we also know this love." During a library fundraiser, they had the opportunity to meet Jack. His level of quiet focus intrigued Emma, while his unexpected laughter relaxed Olivia. Their hearts were united together, and falling in love with him was not a sequential process. Rather, it was a simultaneous resonance. Not only was their marriage license a one-of-a-kind document, but their love was also a complicated, three-part harmony that the world had a hard time comprehending. A kid would be the chord that would be the most deep, in spite of medical orders, and motivated by a hope that took the form of defiance, they attempted to do so. The months turned into a year of quiet disappointments and tense cycles, with the shadow of the warnings being a persistent companion throughout the whole process. On the other hand, the unthinkable. 2 pink lines. Rather than on a single exam, but on 2 tests that they each held in their hands. An instantaneous feeling of anxiety dampened the joy. Expert after expert reiterated the gloomy prediction that was being considered. A single gestational sac was found to be snuggled dangerously inside their shared pelvic cavity, which was located close to the key intersection where their circulatory systems intermingled. This was discovered via the use of ultrasound testing. It was a high-wire performance of hope and terror for each and every scan. During the pregnancy, I faced a challenge. In contrast to Olivia, who had significant rises in blood pressure, Emma was the one who suffered the most from the nausea. There was an enormous strain placed on their common organs, and they moaned. Through the intrusive light, the sisters' tenacity shone through, and they became reluctant icons at this time. In the midst of a storm, 9 months came. That is, a stubborn timeliness that is neither early nor late. There was a lot of stress in the birth room at the specialist surgical facility compared to other rooms. There were clusters of displays that flashed like anxious stars. Obstetricians, cardiovascular surgeons, neonatologists, and perfusionists were among the members of a multidisciplinary team that worked with practiced precision. Their features were engraved with the seriousness of the unknown because of the uncharted. As they were pushed up against each other on the reinforced operating table, Emma and Olivia clenched their hands around Jack's. The emotions that were reflected in his tears were fear, love, and a fervent appeal to the cosmos. Both the sterile odor of antiseptic and the thunderous boom of their common pulse were enhanced on the monitor, and the air was filled with the buzz of both of these sounds. When the lead obstetrician, Dr. Eris Thorne, was getting ready to start the complicated cesarean section, which would include accessing the uterus via the one-of-a-kind anatomical window that their fusion provided, the whole room continued to hold its breath. It was a gleaming scale. A preliminary cut was made. Then there was complete quiet. Rather than the stillness of defeat, it was the silence of complete and total incredulity. When Dr. Thorne looked at his magnifying loupes, his eyes widened widely and he froze. It was silent from him. The only thing he did was stare, and then he slowly and carefully glanced up, catching the shocked gaze of Dr. Lena Petrova, who was the specialist in cardiovascular surgery. Taking a deep breath, Petrova moved in closer to the speaker. The womb was filled with not one, but two infants, both of whom were wriggling and astonishingly pink both at the same time. One was a little bit smaller and coiled up in a calm manner. The other, who was more outspoken, let out a squeaky, embarrassed scream. The medical staff, which had been educated to deal with emergencies, discovered that they were unprepared for this. A nurse eventually said, "It's twins?" The word reverberated in the hushed atmosphere as it was spoken. However, Thorne shook his head slowly, indicating that he was still absorbing the information. "It's not just the twins. Take a look." Using his gloved finger, he gestured in a respectful manner. The exceptional structure of the placenta was remarkable. The umbilical cords of the newborns revealed a tale that couldn't be explained by biology, despite the fact that they shared the amniotic sac. The uterine tissue of Emma was unmistakably connected to one of the cords. The other, which was related to Olivia's, was also uniquely different. Despite the fact that each sister had conceived independently, they brought their children into the world jointly in their combined wombs. This was contrary to every forecast. A heteropaternal superfecundation inside of a conjoined twin pregnancy that occurred spontaneously and was previously unheard of. The second baby's cry, which was a lovely and healthy sound, broke the quiet that had been there. During the time when Jack was kissing Emma and Olivia on the forehead, tears began to pour down his cheeks. "Two," he spat out in a choking voice. "We have two." Not only did the news shock those in the birthing room, but it also exploded people all around the world. Not only did Emma, Olivia, and Jack beat the odds of medical science, but they also unintentionally brought to light a possibility that had been concealed in human genetics. The trip that they took is illustrative of the intense need for family, as well as the extraordinary and at times unexplained ways in which life finds a way. The notions of parenting, the body, and possibility are all called into question by this. It was not only a medical miracle that Sophie and Leo were born, but it was also a demonstration of the tenacity of the human spirit and the magnificent ability of love to bring about the impossible. It didn't take long for the astonished stillness to break in the delivery room either. As a result, it burst into a controlled fury of amazement and movement that was precise. Sophie and Leo were carefully hoisted by neonatologists, and their cries, one of which was more gentle and the other of which was more forceful, became the most beautiful sound in the world. Her APGAR scores were very close to flawless. Weight, length, and reflexes were all indicators of vigorous health, which contradicted every pessimistic forecast. Simply put, the impossible infants were unquestionably flawless. In the immediate aftermath, Emma and Olivia experienced a cloud of tremendous relief, terrible tiredness, and searing agony, all of which were skillfully controlled by a staff that was attentive. Their united body, which had just completed the most extreme form of biological rebellion, now required a significant amount of recuperation. In addition to being watched around the clock for postpartum recovery, they were also examined for any pressure that their interrelated systems could face as a result of the immense job of supporting two different pregnancies. Jack's look was a combination of shell shock and glowing excitement as he scarcely left their side. His gaze was continually darting between his wife and the two bassinets that were wheeled nearby. Globally, the news caused a commotion. Miracle twins born to conjoined mothers. Science stunned as conjoined twins defy biology, each give birth. It was a race for medical conferences. Ethicists engaged in dispute. The divine miracle was praised by several religious organizations. For the initial photographs, tabloids promised millions of dollars. With the tidal surge of worldwide attention, the hospital transformed into a fortress, with its public relations staff being swamped and its security being strengthened. On the other hand, there was a distinct reality that transpired within their protected suite. It was a mess, it was personal, and it was startlingly commonplace in its newness, but it was amazing in the way that it was executed. Feeding is the first obstacle to overcome. At first, lactation consultants, who are experienced in dealing with difficult situations, were at a loss. The breast tissue that Emma and Olivia had in common offered a one-of-a-kind conundrum. They may be able to create enough. Would there be a natural differentiation between the infants? The twins' bodies adapted to their environment, much to the surprise of everyone, even the twins themselves. The output of milk skyrocketed, which seemed to be controlled by the combined demand. When they were hungry, Sophie would often root more insistently towards Emma's side, whereas Leo seemed to be attracted to Olivia's side. Perhaps Sophie was aware of the biological tie between them. They were adept at properly positioning the infants, use cushions in a strategic manner, and Jack was always there to provide an additional set of hands. There was a delicate dance performed by 4 people on several occasions during the day. It was the precise embodiment of the phrase, "It takes a village," distilled into a single exceptional family unit. Colic was the cause of Sophie's first sleepless night, to say nothing of many more. The night owl, that was Leo. As a result of her specialized recovery, Emma required more rest, but Olivia discovered that her vitality returned more quickly. Their shared experience meant that the suffering of one sister would always have an effect on the remainder of the other sister. Jack became the nocturnal superglue, rocking Leo while Olivia slept, walking Sophie so Emma could sleep, learning to change diapers with impressive speed, and sometimes holding a wife's hand for reassurance. He did all of these things while Olivia was sleeping. The feeling of exhaustion was intense, but so was the wonder that was shared. Jack's ability to hold both children simultaneously against their united sides while singing a lullaby that appeared to comfort all 4 of them resulted in the most treasured stolen moment for them. Dr. Thorne and Dr. Petrova became their most ardent champions and gatekeepers after the announcement of the World Knocks. Rewriting chapters on conjoined twins, fertility, and shared physiology was one of the tasks that was assigned to a select group of rigorous medical publications that were provided access to anonymized data. There was a news statement that was carefully controlled that verified the twins' health and the unique circumstances of the births. The press release also pleaded for privacy. There was an overwhelming number of offers for talk programs, book agreements, and documentaries, all of which were politely denied. The most important things for them were to recover, to connect, and to learn how to navigate their new parental reality. Having the initial realization. Jack stared at his family on a peaceful afternoon when Sophie was sleeping on Emma's bosom and Leo was sleeping in Olivia's arms. There was no one else around. His voice was heavy with passion as he muttered, "It's not just that we have 2 babies," illustrating his point. "Yes, that is, we received one from each of you, individually as well, collectively." They were engulfed by the terrible reality of the situation. A minor similarity could be seen in the curvature of Sophie's ear, which was a characteristic shared by Emma's kid. The determined, tiny brow furrow that Olivia had was seen on Leo. Despite this, both infants reacted in the identical way to the voices of both moms, and both sisters experienced the same rush of love for each of their children. Love refused to recognize any divides, despite the fact that biology had given an insurmountable conundrum. Together, in a wonderful way, they were able to claim Sophie and Leo without any reservations. After a period of 6 weeks, when it was determined that the family's condition had reached a satisfactory level, they made preparations to depart from the hospital fortress. An unobtrusive exit was intended by security. As Emma and Olivia were being pushed into a private elevator, each of them clutching their baby, they passed a wide window that looked out onto a courtyard. Jack and the nurses were providing attentive support for them during this process. A throng had collected below, and it was not the paparazzi with their long lenses. Rather, it was regular folks. Handmade signs were displayed, with phrases such as, "Welcome home, Sophie and Leo," "Miracles happen," and "Love conquers all." The tears that were falling down Emma and Olivia's cheeks were silent. Jack gave their jointed hands a gentle squeeze. This was an unexplored voyage that lay ahead. The whole of the medical community would be keeping a close eye on Sophie and Leo as they reached significant developmental milestones. Outings in public would take premeditation and bravery on your part. There was a possibility that one day they might have to explain to their children the distinctive composition of their household. Nevertheless, as their vehicle drove away from the medical facility and headed in the direction of a home that had been tailor-made to meet their requirements, the mood within was one of unspoken success and tremendous love. While Emma held her, Sophie began to stir. Olivia was the subject of Leo's sleepy gaze. Jack turned his gaze back to his wife, and his eyes conveyed all that words could not express. The response they received was never. Doom had been foretold to them in advance. The medical impossibility had been staring them in the face for a long time. In addition, they had brought back 2 wonderful and healthy examples that demonstrated the fact that sometimes the most deep symphonies are made not by following the score, but rather by listening to the immovable pulse of the heart. My reflections continued. This continuation focuses on the beautiful and messy reality that follows the miracle. The birth was the crescendo, but the actual melody resides in the quiet moments of adaptability, tenacity, and infinite love that occurred along the journey. Not only are Emma, Olivia, and Jack medical mysteries, but they are also parents who are negotiating the universal obstacles that come with having a baby, which are compounded by the specific circumstances of their situation. The narrative illustrates the remarkable flexibility of the human body and soul, the power of family, in whatever shape it may take, and the modest heroism that may be found in changing diapers at 3 in the morning after overcoming science itself. Not only did they give birth, but they also made a deliberate decision every day to construct a life that was full of everyday things and deep love in the midst of exceptional things. This was their greatest deed.